How did Star Wars, a movie that no studio wanted and a movie that had an $11 million budget, lead to the world standard in photo editing? It's a story that I bet you didn't even know existed, but you're probably going to stick around to find out.
Who's scruffy looking?
Real quick before we get started, thanks for checking me out and thank you for subscribing. It really means a lot. So how exactly did Star Wars, the hit science fantasy saga from the mind of George Lucas, ultimately lead to Photoshop, the world standard photo editing software? They're two seemingly different franchises with almost nothing in common, but that's wrong. What you have to understand first is that Star Wars wasn't a success when it started. In fact, the complete opposite. George Lucas was a known director in Hollywood after his hit movie American Graffiti. He had the eyes of some of the best in the business, but his idea for Star Wars was rejected multiple times. In fact, when 20th Century Fox okayed George to make the movie, it was only because they liked American Graffiti so much. The production was riddled with problems from beginning to end, and oh yeah, Fox's special effects studio had shut down. So for George Lucas to make the groundbreaking special effects he desired in Star Wars, he simply started his own company. And in 1976, ILM was born. Thanks to ILM, Star Wars became a huge success when it hit the theaters. The special effects completely revolutionized how films were made. Using models and state-of-the-art camera technology, ILM gave Star Wars a very realistic feel that made the fantastical world seem tangible, and audiences adored it. One of those audience members was a young man who loved to build models. World War II fighters, spaceships, vehicles of his own invention, anything he could dream. And like most kids building models in the 1970s, he bid hard on the special effects in the original Star Wars. That young man was John Knoll. And in 1978, Knoll's dad was scheduled to speak at a conference in Anaheim. Thrilled to be near Hollywood, John checked the phone book for Industrial Light and Magic, and soon after, John was talking to Grant McCune, the head of ILM's model shop. John explained that he was a model maker and talked his way into a tour. After graduating from USC, he landed his dream job at ILM, of course, where he worked on a number of their early films.
Actually, early in his career, when he was still a camera operator in 1986, Knoll asked to go see ILM's computer graphics group and the machine that they had built, called the Pixar. But that's a story for another time.
But he was inspired by the Pixar's ability to digitally manipulate images, so he went home and started trying to write his own graphics programs on his Mac. His brother Tom was actually doing the same thing. Together, they wrote their own image manipulator together, and John spent his nights at ILM testing out the program on his own pictures. ILM was so impressed with the program that it landed him a job on James Cameron's The Abyss. The CG scenes centered on what the team called the pseudopod, a liquidescent, tentacle-like creature that could morph its surfaces into faces. He brought a still camera to the set and captured the scenes from every possible light and camera location.
For reflections, I needed to photograph the whole environment, all the way around. Now it's become standard practice to have still cameras photograph the environments of every setup we do.
Knoll pasted the photos together using his and his brother's new program they called Photoshop. Photoshop took off. By the third version, Adobe decided it needed to own the software. Tom went to work for Adobe, which now has more than 10 million Photoshop users, and John stayed at ILM. Now, in some poetic fashion, in 1995, George Lucas announced that he wanted to clean up and re-release the original trilogy. The special editions happened to line up with Knoll's latest hobby, and Knoll knew something that the rest of ILM didn't. He could replicate, even improve, many of the effects cheaply and easily on his Mac with Photoshop. The rest, they say, is history. Knoll continued to work at ILM and is one of the main engineers behind every Star Wars movie and television show that ILM touches.
And there you have it, the story about how Star Wars directly affected and created the best photo editing program in history. Now, I got this story from a graphic that someone shared with me on Twitter a while back, and I was so surprised to find out how many things Star Wars directly created or influenced. Even now, the original Star Wars from 1977 is still having direct effects on the movie industry today. Listen, if you know any cool stories like this, please share them with me in the comments because I love learning about this kind of stuff. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.